Welcome to the All Eers podcast, powered by HD Media.
Hi all, welcome into a new edition of All Eers. I'm your host, Taylor Kennedy. Thank you all for joining us. However you may be listening to us, you can find us on Spotify, Apple Podcast, and YouTube as well. We're live out here in Omaha, Nebraska. We've been out here since last Wednesday, flew in out of Pittsburgh, had a very steady flight, had a connecting flight out of St. Louis. Met up with a couple of Mountaineer fans. We'll talk about that here coming up shortly, but yeah, we've been out here since Wednesday, been here for practice, and both of West Virginia's games, the Mountaineers are 1-1 as we are recording this on a Monday. They will play on Tuesday, so we'll talk about that. We'll talk about what happened on Friday and also what happened, unfortunately, on Sunday and all points in between. But yeah, lovely area, great atmosphere, great contingency of West Virginia University fans, so we'll talk about that as well. But I'm pleased to be rejoined, I should say, by Student Radio U92, Swiss Army Knife, as I said, Mr. Quinn Robie, who has been out here on the scene for U92, the student radio station in Morgantown, covering the games and calling the games. Actually, Quinn, welcome back to the program.
Yeah, thanks for having me back.
Dude, I think from your perspective, you've probably been like on an all-time high with this. You've probably been like giddy from the start. I mean, you got the credential approved, and to my knowledge, you guys are the only student radio station to have set up and have called games here out in Omaha since Friday. Yeah,
we're the only student media, I think, in total, including the Daily Athenaeum. I haven't seen another student newspaper here either, so we just decided that, it was our duty to continue to cover this historic run like we have all season. We've covered every home game and for baseball and U92, and so we felt like, okay, well, let's head out to Omaha and continue calling what could continue to be a historic run.
Yeah, shout out to the DA as well. Both Jack Serpico and Cody Burton are also out here as well, and you have Brett out here as well. Yep. Give a little shout out to Brett, that's your color guy.
Yeah, Brett is he's going to be the next sports director at U92, so he's getting his feet wet in what NCAA tournament is like. Now, obviously, I don't know what a final is like, but here we are.
Yeah, so let's kind of go with the bad first before we go with reverse that. Let's pivot, as they say in sports terms. We're going to go with the good first, then the bad in the next segment. Then we're going to preview ahead to Tuesday's matchup against the Troy Trojans, which leads into our first segment. You look at Friday. I think Friday in a lot of ways feels like it happened 15 years ago already, because just from the amount of downtime that West Virginia has had, and just the break that they had in between Friday to Sunday, it seemed like it happened 15 years ago. But from your perspective, the importance of getting that under your belt, regardless if you go 1-2, I'm just glad you didn't go 0-2, quite frankly, and you're not like an Ole Miss and that lost both of their games here in the College World Series.
Yeah, it was important to get one game under your belt because playing in this stadium is completely different. I mean, it's a AAA ballpark, and so it's completely different. I think getting that first game under your belt really helped you. We kind of saw that, now they know how to play the field, and so I think that's important. You don't want to go 0-2. You don't want to make it for the first time in program history and go 0-2. That's just that doesn't. It kind of just kills the historic run. And so you go. Well, you're at least going to have one win under your belt, and so you're going to have the opportunity. And there's going to be a team like Alabama or Texas that is going to go 0-2, an SEC program. So it's not like it's a bad thing, but you definitely don't want to come here, make it here, and go 0-2. You want to at least win one and win it in the fashion that they did.
Yeah, before we go any further, I forgot to do this when we led into this podcast, but shout out to 5th Street Brewing. They've been huge contributors of our travel, our coverage by sponsoring us here out in Omaha. So shout out to 5th Street Brewing. You can check them out, 180 Summer Street in Charleston, West Virginia, 25301. They have a variety of craft beer. And Quinn, I don't know if you're a craft beer guy. First and foremost, are you 21?
Yeah.
Okay, you must be 21 to drink, by the way. I want to get that disclaimer out there. But regardless, the Charleston beer at 5th Street, top notch, fine folks. But the other thing is their food, crab rangoon sandwich, top tier.
Oh, that sounds
top
good.
tier. You give me that with the kettle chips, the sweet and sour sauce. Yep. As the saying goes, I'm in there like swimwear. Anyway, back to Friday's game. So But yeah, again, shout out to 5th Street Brewing. But no, I think the big thing with Friday, when I look back at that, is again, you got the one under your belt, you got the monkey off your back, because a lot of people, including myself, I was like, are you going to be able to get that one? Are you going to be able to harness all those emotions and move forward from that, rather than being a victim of the moment and losing against a Troy team that, again, they'll play on Tuesday. They'll play on Tuesday again, but we'll talk about it in our third segment, but this Troy team, they can freaking smash the ball.
Yeah, they're hitting the ball really, really well. They got out of the Gainesville Regional, and we're hitting the ball really well there, and they're continuing to hit the ball well. We saw it yesterday against Ole Miss. They weren't at the beginning of the game, and then they took off, and I think that's what's important for Troy, is that they're hitting the ball at the right time. And so, obviously, we'll get into Troy later. Some other things could play a factor, but I think the fact that they're hitting the ball right now has to worry you just a little bit. They tore up Chance and Cole, which there are Big 12 teams that couldn't do that. They tore up one of the best pitchers in the Big 12, and I think that says a lot to Troy, to their coaching staff, to the players that they have, and I think that they're going to continue to do that if you're not careful.
Yeah, and I thought the other thing, speaking of pitching from West Virginia, obviously Chance and Cole got shelled there, it seemed like, but then Ian Korn came in and kind of just pumped the brakes and said, okay, rain makes corn makes strikeouts. Sorry for the play on words. Shout out Luke Bryan. But anyway, no, I think the way that the pitching staff and the bullpen responded after seeing Chance and Cole, who, by the way, had started in the Binghamton game in the beginning of NCAA postseason, and then started the series against Cal Poly, had a combined 21 strikeouts in both of those games, including 11 against Cal Poly in Game 1. But I think the way that the pitching staff has responded has been a lot better, in my opinion, than what I had anticipated. Obviously, Cole did not perform as well. Yale, obviously, on Sunday didn't have a great start, but obviously responded in a way that allowed West Virginia to remain competitive through about 6 innings. 5 innings maybe. But regardless, I think the way that the pitching staff has continued to grow, now again, Tuesday will be the kicker, because now you have that one loss to your name. How is this pitching group going to respond moving forward against a Troy team that, like, as we both alluded to, and it starts with Jimmy Janicki, has just been crushing it.
Yeah, I said it when Chanson got out. It could be a blessing in disguise, because there's a chance that whoever they start against Troy on Tuesday, if they win that game, then you have Chance and Cole. You're not going to start Chance and Cole against Troy again, but you're going to probably go with Dawson Montessa. Troy is not very good at hitting the fastballs that are above 95, so that leans into Dawson Montessa perfectly. Montessa is around 97, 98 at times, so he may get the start depending on what they want to lean and where they want to go. But when you look at it, Troy is going to tear up Chance and Cole likely again. So you have him again if you have to play North Carolina again. And so I think that's the positive that you take out of there. I think that, he didn't go that long, and I think that was kind of in the mind of Steve Sabins as well, was like, okay, let's get him out of here. Let's go lean on Korn. We can keep him and have him come out of the bullpen. I know he was hot yesterday, and a chance if they absolutely needed him. But again, you're in the winner's bracket. There's no need to break the glass and pull the siren.
Before we take a break, I want to mention this because we were talking, I don't know if you were part of the conversation, but there was a couple of us talking during the Cal Poly Regional in Game 2 that Saturday, and I posed a question: where does this season, or even where would that series victory or series clinching victory over Cal Poly rank top 5 in Mountaineer moments since 2000? And in a lot of ways, I think now you can say, where does that Troy win rank top 5 since 2000? Because you're in the College World Series for the first time in program history. You get the first win in program history out here in Omaha, but the fashion that you did it, you were down 4-3 after 3, and then you scored 4 of the final combined 5 runs the remainder of the game, including a Tyrus Hall 2-run RBI single that arguably clinched the game for West Virginia. And I look at it in a lot of different ways because obviously people want to mention the 05 Sugar Bowl, the 08 Fiesta Bowl. I know some people want to throw out the 2012 Orange Bowl as well, 2010 Final Four run. You can mention the Duke game as well whenever they beat them in Huggs' first season. Nikki Izzo-Brown and the women's soccer team making the national championship game after beating North Carolina. There's just a plethora of games. So my question, Quinn, I know you're a lot younger than a lot of the people that probably listen to this podcast, and you're a little bit younger than I am since I'm only 26. But in your lifetime, set aside the work aspect of it. Where does this rank just from a pure victory standpoint? Because again, you are just like me in the knowledge of West Virginia athletics. Where does it rank in all-time victories for West Virginia since 2000?
Yeah, I think it ranks. I mean, you mentioned those 2 bowl games. Obviously, how big those were. Those are 1 and 2. The fashion that it happened. I think this goes number 3 solely on the fact of where you are. You're in the final of college baseball, the mecca of college baseball. I think it puts you at 3 because of that. Just because the program was nearly shut down 16 years ago. So I think that plays a factor. And I think it definitely is in the top 3 in that conversation just because of how big it is to the program, like you mentioned. And like I said, the program was nearly shut down. If it wasn't for Oliver Luck having that conversation with a ton of people, we wouldn't be here right now. And so I think that it definitely is a top 3 solely on the fact of where you are. I mean, everybody's goal is to get to Omaha, and they're finally here.
Yeah, again, you mentioned the whole baseball story arc since 2010, and again, you mentioned how baseball was shut down. We'll give a quick plug as well. If you haven't already, stop this podcast, go back a podcast, and go listen to my conversation with former West Virginia Athletic Director Oliver Luck. We went about an hour just talking about all things about where this West Virginia program not only is now, but where it was, how close it was for him saying, okay, we're done with this. What went into that baseball summit as well. I also asked him about the transition from the Big East to the Big 12. So again, I encourage you, stop this podcast, go back a podcast episode, listen to that, and get more analysis and just insight as to the reinvestment that Oliver Luck had in this baseball program. Break to take here on the All Ears podcast. We'll continue our conversation with Quinn Robie, and we'll do that on the other side of this break. This is All Ears.
As the game gets faster, stronger, more dynamic, your equipment has to keep up. Introducing the Riddell Axiom, the next evolution in football protection, designed to match the speed and strength of today's athlete. Contact West Virginia Riddell representative Casey Turley at 304-552-5960. Gear up, play smart, stay protected.
HD Media Sports is your one-stop destination for top high school and college sports coverage in the Mountain State. From Morgantown to Mingo County, our award-winning reporters keep you informed about your favorite teams and players, including exclusive coverage of the Marshall Thundering Herd and the West Virginia Mountaineers. Follow HD Media Sports on Facebook to stay up to date on the latest news, features, and game coverage.
Welcome back in. All Ears rolling along here, and we're live out here in Omaha, and we are joined by Quinn Robie. But before we continue our conversation with Quinn, special shout out to 5th Street Brewing for sponsoring our coverage out here in Omaha. Go check them out, 180 Summer Street in Charleston. 25301 is the address. They have a variety of craft beer, including the Charleston beer, which is by far my favorite, and a plethora of great food, great hospitality, just an overall great vibe. So if you're in for great vibe, great craft beer, go check them out, 180 Summer Street in Charleston. So Quinn, Sunday night, obviously not the way that the Mountaineers wanted to see this journey, this trip go. Knotted up at 2 through about 6 innings, and then the inevitable happened. They get 2 costly errors in the bottom of the 7th inning, which led to 3 runs by North Carolina in that frame. North Carolina eventually ends up winning the game 5-2. I don't want to single people out, but you could tell when those 2 errors happened, the air just got lifted out of the stadium by West Virginia. In a lot of ways, it just not really crushing in the moment. You obviously still had a couple of innings to play, but you could just tell. I could just tell from afar. I know I'm sitting along with you. I know we're sitting about 250 feet up in the air, but regardless, those two costly errors definitely took the wind out of that game.
Yeah, you could almost feel it, and it sucks that that's what happened, and obviously how good these players have been, and nonetheless, you really just, you hate it, but this is why the tournament's double elimination, and we saw that in the regional. The players, Brody Crisser made an error, and then ended up coming up huge against Kentucky. So you have the ability to do it, and so I think you put it past you. But baseball is such a mental sport, and thinking of it in the moment where you are, there's 24,000 people watching you take this ground ball. It's going to happen. Errors are going to happen. Steve said that, and he said in so many innings of baseball, errors are going to happen. It is what it is. You just got to move past it. And so I think that's kind of the mindset that you're going to have.
I agree with that in a lot of different ways, but now the more interesting thing is, I mentioned this to someone yesterday, the response now by West Virginia I feel is at a bigger magnitude. And what I mean by that is, you alluded to the Morgantown Regional just a couple of weeks ago inside Kendrick Family Ballpark, and they suffered that loss to Kentucky. They were down by 3 runs. They got one back, and they lose 11-9 game 1 against the Wildcats. And they turn around, and we all know the story, scoring 5 unanswered runs in the top of the 9th, 5 go-ahead runs, I should say, in the top of the 9th to take another 11-9 victory following an absolute blast by Paul Schoenfeld. And then from there, following that Kentucky loss, leading into Sunday, you had won 6 consecutive games leading into last night's game against North Carolina. This team was rolling in a lot of ways. I thought the pitching was fantastic. Obviously, we could see, we can talk about just how that group kind of transformed. You had different guys stepping up, Dawson Montesa, Chance Cole, just Ben McDougal. I mean, the list can go on and on and on about these guys, but now it seems like the response, and I know a lot of times in press conferences, as you've been a part of just as well as I have, we keep asking about the resiliency. And to me, as someone that has followed sports very closely, resiliency can get you as far as you take it. But when you get to a bigger stage like you are in Omaha, it just seems like it increases and it swells up like a foot whenever you twist an ankle and you don't treat it for 24 hours. It just continues to swell up and look like a frickin' softball. So I think the resiliency and the response is definitely going to be tested, especially against the Troy team, and we'll talk about this in our next segment, but you're going against a Troy team, as we've said, they can hit it, they're playing really well, but they're also playing with their hair on fire.
Yep.
So they're playing like they got nothing to lose. That does not pose well, in my opinion, for West Virginia.
No, it doesn't. I think the positive is that you have pitching depth. You got a good outing out of Maxiell yesterday. He had a rough first inning, but then after that posted nothing but zeros until errors were made by the Mountaineer defense. So I think the fact that you have pitching helps, because Troy does not have pitching. They, in fact, actually had to go to guys that pitched against West Virginia again. And so you have guys pitching-wise, from the bullpen, Bassinger only pitched an inning. I think that's huge. Ben McDougal only pitched, hit less than an inning. And you still have Carson Estridge. You still have Joshua Surga, who we haven't seen in 2 weeks almost. So you have guys in the bullpen. I think that plays well for West Virginia. But like you said, Troy is playing with their hair on fire right now, and that does not bode well for West Virginia.
That game against North Carolina, too, kind of made me realize just how good this WVU defense was to this point. I know you can go back to, I can't remember exactly which Kentucky game it was. I think it might have been the first game. They had 3 costly errors that ultimately led to Kentucky just playing arguably its best ball that whole weekend. But then you went on a stretch where you didn't have an error for 4 consecutive games. This team is capable of playing clean baseball. This team was also, leading into Sunday, was atop the Big 12, mind you, in errors this season, with the least amount of errors with 45. Now they tack on 2. Now you're at 47, but they're still leading the pack with the least amount of errors. So you can scream at a wall, you can yell at the sky and say that it's not blue and whatever you want to do. But this defense has been a catalyst and pretty much not really underappreciated, but more of it's gone under the radar. That's probably the best way of saying it. It's not underappreciated, but it's gone under the radar in allowing this team get to the position that they are now, only 1-1 in the College World Series out here in Omaha.
Yeah, the defense has been so good. And if you're Steve Sabins, you're probably sitting in a moment of deja vu because of what happened. It was 2 costly errors. In fact, it was 2 costly errors by the same players in Tyrus Hall and Brody Kresser. So you're almost kind of sitting there with deja vu, and you're looking at it. And I think for the team itself, you have to have confidence because you're like, okay, well, we know what we can do. We've come back from this literally 2 weeks ago. So I think you find confidence in that. And West Virginia, like you said, hasn't committed many errors, and that's been a huge factor. And so if they can play clean baseball and they can score runs first, West Virginia finds success. Or when they score 6 or 4 or more runs in an inning, which is what they call a kill shot in college baseball, West Virginia is one of the top teams in the country. So if you can do that against Troy, you're going to be fine, but you have to play clean baseball. That's where West Virginia has found their success. You got to continue to do that if you want to go on and win a national championship.
Yeah, I don't disagree with you at all. I forget the stat that I saw. I think they were like 2-8, 2-9 when they scored 2 or less runs, and then they're 5-8 whenever they commit 2 or more errors in a game following last night. Yep. So not a winning recipe. I think the 5 wins probably don't get spoken about enough. But I think regardless, Tuesday's game becomes even more of a, okay, we talk so much about resilience and response, go show us. Go show us what you're capable of in a back against the wall type game against the Trojans. So break the take here. We're going to end by talking about Tuesday's contest against Troy, and we'll do so on the other side of this break. This is All Ears.
Oh, good gravy. The kind made from real premium sausage. The kind that's smothered over deliciousness. The kind you can only get at Tudor's Biscuit World. That's the gravy that's oh so good. It's the perfect topping to your biscuits or your taters, and even makes a delicious side. It's oh so good gravy. Tudor's Biscuit World. We're dripping with oh good gravy.
HD Media Game Day is your streaming home for the best in live high school sports across West Virginia. Featuring football, basketball, soccer, and more, HD Media Game Day brings the action to you for free, exclusively on our YouTube channel and at hdmediagameday.com. When you can't make it to the game, HD Media Game Day has you covered.
Final segment here of the All Ears podcast. We are live out here in Omaha, Nebraska, covering the 2026 Men's College World Series, and West Virginia is 1-1. They won on Friday against Troy 7-5, then dropped its first contest in the Men's College World Series to North Carolina on Sunday 5-2. But going back to the Troy game, Quinn, they pick up the win on Friday. We talked about the importance and the significance of that victory, but now you're playing against a Troy team, as we alluded to in that last segment. Hell are on fire, playing their best baseball, took down Ole Miss 12-8 before West Virginia took the field against North Carolina on Sunday. There's a lot of different intangibles that are floating around this game, and it kind of gives me this not really sickening feeling, but it kind of makes me a little queasy just in regards to this could either go really good or really bad. Yeah. There's no point in between. And as always, we want to make sure that West Virginia's on the good side of things, obviously. But there's just something that's not sitting. It's like whenever you go to like a hole in the wall buffet place. Yeah. You walk in there, you get as much food as you want. It's kind of like how we're doing right now. We're getting as much content as possible to give to our audience. But when you go to the buffet, you get as much food as you can. You sit down, you start eating. You get up, you leave, and now you're thinking, okay, I'm either gonna go to the bathroom immediately as I get in the car, or it's gonna be a great evening. I'm gonna enjoy the rest of my evening. It's gonna be one of the two, and that's just kind of the weird parallel that I see between the two. But that's just That's just how I am, my brain. You know me.
Yeah, it's really weird. And it feels different because it's like, I don't know if it's because, okay, yeah, you lose, your season is over. But I don't know why it feels that way, because that was the case 2 weeks ago.
Mm-hmm.
And so it feels really weird that, I don't know, maybe it's because still on a high from that run. But you just, I don't know. It's really weird because it just doesn't feel like it did 2 weeks ago. Like you almost have confidence that, okay, well, we're going to be here until next Tuesday or whenever it is. You know, like it feels really, really weird.
Yeah, the weirdness of it, that's a good way of saying it. The weirdness of it is probably the more unsettling thing, because, again, you've been riding such an emotional high since pretty much the last week of May or the last weekend of May. And now you're out here in Omaha. You got the win. Not saying they're going to be content by any means, but now it needs to be like, okay, how are we going to be able to channel everything and be able to compete in another baseball game? And, you know, I look at this Troy lineup, and I mentioned him earlier. Jimmy Janicki is probably one of the better bat-on-ball contact players that I've seen, just in regards to, one, his power, but also his ability to fight back in the count and then be able to get a ball on a barrel and make something out of it. And we saw that against West Virginia when he hit a home run. And that kind of got me thinking, I'm like, uh-oh. This is like that. When he hit that home run, I went, uh-oh. This may not bode well for the Mountaineers. But 2 p.m. Eastern, 1 p.m. local time out here in Omaha. The big question, and you mentioned this earlier, I thought it was a really good point. Who they're going to throw is the big question. Yeah. You could go Montesa, and Montesa had a fantastic outing out in the regional, but he hasn't played since the regional, I don't believe. Is that correct, what I'm saying? I don't remember seeing him in the Cal Poly series.
Yeah, I don't think so.
I think we saw the last time that we saw him was, I believe, against Wake.
No, he pitched against Kentucky.
That's right. Yes, you're right. Yep. That just, again, that feels like it was 15 years ago as well. But regardless, you have options. I do think he's going to lean Montesa, but it would not surprise me if he starts Bassinger, or maybe I think what he'll probably do, hopefully I'm wrong, because I never know. You could very easily see 3 pitchers. Yeah. And maybe each of them taking a third, with McDougal closing it out, just because he relies so heavily in big game moments with McDougal. And this is the biggest game of the year. I know it's such a cliche thing to say, but this is the biggest game of the year.
Yeah, absolutely. And every game going forward is now the biggest game of the year. I think going kind of the 3 innings each could work, but it's got to depend on what is happening in the game. Who do you start? Do you go with Reese Bassinger? But like I said, Dawson Montesa, very good fastball pitcher with high velocity. That's why they brought him in here. Troy, not a high velocity hitting team. They take guys like Chanson Cole, who has a slider. They hit better against those guys. So do you go Dawson Montesa, let him go? We saw what he did against Wake Forest. A lot of people were nervous because of the way that Dawson Montesa started. I think the month break that he pretty much had there at the end of the regular season helped him kind of reset his mind. He has pitched great. I would love to see, and I should look what his ERA is in the postseason. I don't know if he has allowed a run. If he has, he's only allowed 1 or 2. And so when you look at it, Dawson Montesa has done a very good job. I think you have to go to that. I think you got to look at it on the fact of, okay, let's go to a guy who has a lot of fire. When they won the Super Regional, clinched the spot into Omaha, there wasn't a guy that was screaming and was up in people's faces more than Dawson Montesa. He was so pumped to get to Omaha, and so I think you have to lean on the guy that's going to have a lot of motivation to do it. And so look at it now. What can Dawson Montesa do? What can Reese Bassinger do? What can Ben McDougal do? Again, you have Joshua Sergal. You have JT Costanzo, who has warmed up in the bullpen at times, has gotten up and loose. And so you have a lot of guys that you can still use, that you can still lean on and trust, and it's going to be very interesting.
Yeah, I look at the 2 postseason games that Montesa pitched in. Wake Forest game on May the 31st, 7 1/3 innings, 5 runs, 4 earned runs. He did strike out 7 while walking 4. Then he pitched 2/3 of an inning against Kentucky on June the 1st, and he did strike out 1 batter while also walking 1 as well. So the big question as baseball normally always is, who are you going to throw out? Who are you going to put out there to start the game? How strategic are you going to be throughout the course of a game with the bullpen that you have? Now it just kind of seems like all hands need to be on deck. But here's my thing, and we'll end with this. I'm interested in your answer with this as well. In the last, I need to be very generous in how I say this. In the last about 3-4 games, we have not seen Gavin Kelly or Paul Schoenfeld show up. Mm-hmm. I'm not personally attacking them, but I'm also kind of putting out the Batman signal. Where are they? Where are they? Are they going to show up? I mean, your number one hitter, arguably your number one hitter, or one of your better hitters, I should say, in Gavin Kelly, hasn't shown up consistently since one of the Kentucky games. Yeah. I mean, he had a couple of home runs against Cal Poly, but you look at his batting average, and it's not quite there. You look at Schoenfeld, only 2 hits since he hit that massive home run against Kentucky in the Sunday game inside Kendrick Family Ballpark. So if WVU were to win, those 2 guys specifically need to step up, period, bottom line. Because Gavin Kelly is your best contact hitter. Let me rephrase. Gavin Kelly is your best power hitter. Schoenfeld needs to just step up overall just because he has such an emotional high, and now his response is a lot worse than the moment that he had against Kentucky. So those 2 guys specifically, because obviously we know what Armani Guzman's going to do. He was very effective in the count and got a couple of hits yesterday against North Carolina. And then you continue to go down the lineup. Ben Lumsden, Tyrus Hall have had fantastic postseasons as well. But you look at the 2 and 3 people in the lineup, and Gavin Kelly and Paul Schoenfeld, they got to step up, period. If WVU wants to stay alive in this College World Series, those 2 dudes have to step up.
Yeah, Gavin Kelly, and it's been frustrating for a lot of WVU fans. I've seen it on Twitter and Facebook. And so a lot of people are very upset with Gavin Kelly. And baseball players go through slumps, but now is not the time to go through a slump. We'll see how they respond. Does Gavin Kelly show up in the biggest moment? Is he going to? What's going to happen? And I think that he will. I do think that yesterday he had a single. That was it. I think he's got to do more. This ballpark, he's not going to leave this ballpark. This doesn't suit Gavin Kelly. So that's okay. These gaps are pretty big out in the outfield, and so see what he can do. We saw a triple. Maxiell allowed his first triple. Can Gavin Kelly respond and do the same thing? I think for Paul Schoenfeld, he's got to continue his RBI run, continue to hit the way that he has. He's just got to they just got to find it mentally first. Baseball's such a big mental game. Find it mentally first. They're going to find success. If you can have those 2 guys come up big, West Virginia is one of the toughest teams in the country to beat.
Yeah, the mental chess war will begin on Tuesday, 2 p.m. Eastern, 1 p.m. Central Time. I should say. About to say Pacific. That was going to be incorrect regardless. But regardless, 2 p.m. Eastern, 1 p.m. Central Time, which is where we're at out here in Omaha. So that'll do it for us. Special thanks to Quinn Robie for joining me. Special thanks, as always, to 5th Street Brewing at 180 Summer Street in Charleston, 25301. You can check them out. A variety of craft beer, including my favorite, the Charleston beer. Also a great selection of food, which, again, my personal favorite, the crab rangoon sandwich. So special thanks to Derek Godwin and all of his peeps over there at 5th Street Brewing. You can find us on social media just by simply going to the description of this podcast and seeing the link for all of those, from Twitter to Facebook, our brand new Facebook page. If you haven't already, go follow us. Invite friends to follow our All Eers Facebook page. It is All Eers, and we will talk to you all again on our next edition of All Eers. We will recap the baseball edition once the baseball season is over. Hopefully that does not come this week. Hopefully it comes next week, but we will potentially talk with you all later in the week as we will continue to talk about the Men's College World Series out here in Omaha. This is your host, Taylor Kennedy, signing off, and we will see you again on All Eers.
You have been listening to the All Eers podcast, powered by HD Media.